Delighted to be on the Statkraft Clonfad Solar Farm project here in Westmeath today, and I'm joined by Shannon Malone, who's the EHS advisor on this site for Suir Engineering, who are actually the PSCS on the project. Shannon, we've been talking even before off camera, and you were telling me about your journey, but in terms of safety and you as a health and safety advisor trying to help manage a project like this for Suir Engineering, give us an idea of what that involves.
I suppose we're dealing with a 175 megawatt solar farm here located in County Westmeath, and there's so many elements when you're thinking about safety right from the beginning. So we mobilised here last May, and we're kind of on the finishing stages at the moment, a year and a bit later. So you know, there's a serious amount of civil works that was involved. You can see obviously behind me we have one of our SDSs, and then obviously the solar panels which are located across the site. So the site is split between 6 schedules. We were dealing with haul roads, we were dealing with pulling cables, have a lot of overhead lines here throughout the site, from 110 kV lines to 220 kV lines. It's just the control measures that had to be put in place at the very, very beginning. Your lateral safety zones, your goal posts, you know, machines going in certain areas, you might need restrictors, etc. That would have had to happen at the beginning to get the site set up. So then when you start putting in your haul roads, you start putting in your compounds. We had a main compound where we are site set up with all our offices and our shed and a storage area, but we also had 3 separate compounds on site, just because of obviously the size of the site. It's quite a large solar farm. So we would have had to just split up areas, especially with the volume of people we would have had working over here throughout maybe the winter months. So just the setup of those areas, those compounds, and then obviously just when you start getting into the higher risk areas, you know, your testing, your commissioning of the STSs, you know, the substation. We have a 110 kV substation here on site too. So you know, you're setting those areas up, your IPP building, your air building, your transformer, etc. So there would have been a lot at the very beginning, and like you have to, safety from I suppose the start has to start at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And you have to put such an emphasis in with contractors. We are PSCS here, and I just think that liaising with subcontractors from an early stage, from the very beginning, is so important. You know, sure, have a specific way of doing things, and EHS pre-quals and stuff that we go through with subcontractors beforehand, and to get the subcontractors aware of what we require and what we require them to do, and to build it, like your risk assessments, your SPAs, your permits are only a small factor on what actually goes on here, and the control measures that we have to put in place. Number 1, because of the size, and number 2, because I suppose when you think of solar farm you just think of panels on a land, but you know, there's so much more to it, and all your cabling is underground, and there's just certain areas that you really have to watch.
Have to consider.
Yeah, you have to, and it really, I suppose, from the beginning, the more you can communicate with your subcontract and your own Suir staff, and I suppose Statkraft are a very good client, and they have a very good relationship with Suir over the years, and they're very, very good to us here, you know, and they're very helpful. So having them on board from the beginning as well is brilliant. It's
interesting because when I was talking to you, and we were Suir, one of our main sponsors for the Construction Safety Campaign, which kicks off on the 13th of October, and these conversations that we're trying to have are to get people to step back and maybe think. I mean, the whole concept is going back to basics, and we've 5 sub themes, and the sub theme I wanted to deal with Suir, to work with Suir on, is falls from height. My immediate thought was, it's a solar farm, everything looks, you know, the levels that we're looking at, but you automatically sort of says, no, hold on a minute, Sean, we're excavating everywhere, or we've done all that. So describe maybe some of the issues you had there, challenges.
So I suppose just from a locational aspect, Westmeath is quite boggy ground, and throughout a lot of the solar farm we're looking at boggy ground conditions. So we're looking at, we had to excavate for LV trenching, and then we had to do MV trenching, and then obviously we had to excavate for our STSs, which are behind me, and there was joint bays and C2 chambers installed throughout different locations as well. So during a lot of our excavation was done throughout the winter, but like during the winter months you're talking about a lot of trenches. Then you're looking at edge protection. So how we managed it here was we used fencing posts with bunting around them, because the Harris fencing and the barriers just wasn't going to work with the size of the project. So signage, fence and posts and bunting was just what we had to use here, because we could have a trench that could be 1.5 kilometres long.
Yeah.
And in order, you can't obviously Harris fence all that, and then you have our electrical contractor, our cable pullers, who will come in with tractors and winches, and then they have to remove everything.
Yeah.
So the fence and posts were a way that, you know, the guys could still work, but there was also edge protection in place for the trenches. And then you get up to areas where you have your, we would have had the excavations for the SDSs, so we would have essentially Harris fenced all around there at the very beginning, while our concreting and shutter and formwork was going on. We would have to remove them then to install our SDS, which is behind me, using cranes. So you would have had your crane pads set up on your crane, and they would have been lifted in from lorries, and then they would have been left open for quite some time, because the LV, the MV, the fibre, the CCTV cable all had to go into that area.
Okay.
So then the control around them, you know, your Harris fencing, barriers, and then post and rails as well would have been used, just because you come into the winter, the wind will come, you know, it was a way of sustaining it, and then we got to a stage where we could backfill. So I suppose what's behind me here is an example of what the finished product looks like. We've 14 SDSs in total here in Clonfad.
That's basically a
transformer, yeah.
For this particular schedule?
For this particular schedule,
okay.
So our HV would run back from here back to the substation, yep, through a grid connection, all done underground, so in Ducton.
How many units, you mentioned earlier on, how many actual panels in the entire site?
So we're talking about 300,000 panels.
Wow,
so
okay.
We'll just show you the size of the site.
So each schedule's probably picking up what, about 60?
Yeah, you're probably kind of looking at maybe just around the 100 acres on each, wow, schedule, give or take. Some might be smaller and some, yeah, might be bigger. Schedule 4 is one of definitely our bigger schedules, and we have 3 SDSs down there.
Okay.
So we would have 2 SDSs here. So
okay,
it would depend on the sheer volume, I suppose, of, yeah, panels that are in that area. And then you have your inverters, which run from, so the LV cable will run from your inverter back to the SDS, and then your MV cable will run from the SDS back to the site.
I know, we'll talk in a wee minute maybe about your journey into, yeah, health and safety,
yeah,
but just even from asking you when we came onto the site, give us an idea about the scale of it and the kind of the logistics, what goes where. You know, I have to say I'm really impressed, you know, because I would have thought like people sit in their disciplines, but you have a huge technical knowledge even of just the aspects. I suppose that's really important, because then you know the risks associated with
it. It is really important, you know, and I think you nearly, on a job that's this size, and I suppose essentially with us being PSCS here, yeah, you have to have an idea of what's going on. Now I have a great interest in it, so that helps, but you really do, because you can highlight areas, and you know, we're lucky here, we have a very, very good construction management team, and like our foremans and our supervisors, and across board everyone's brilliant. They let you in on the meetings, and this is why, yeah, going to the EHS meetings at the very beginning and having EHS in on meetings, maybe ones that we shouldn't have been in on at the beginning, but we were in, yeah, it gives you such a good understanding. Yeah. I'm only a year out of college, so like for me I had to learn when I came here. I had to understand what was going on, or I wouldn't have known. And you know, getting that exposure with the subcontractors, and we had good subcontractors here who really helped us, and no question was too stupid for me to ask them, like at times.
No, but for someone that's only a year out of college, you have an unbelievable knowledge of what's going on, and it's a brilliant position that you're in. And I can see that you've just even mentioned a couple of things there, like asking. There is no stupid question. Yeah. But even being not being afraid to get into the meeting and just sit there as a passive observer, because you're picking up the pressures and the strains of everybody in the room, and schedule and cost and everything else as well. Yeah. That and even logistics when plant and equipment's coming. So I think you're giving a lot of messages to a lot of the people that'll be listening, you know, to the podcast. We're on YouTube as well. To be able to watch and see, you know, even just like the scale of the site. We talked about falls from height, and I want to touch on that. As part of the campaign in October, we're going to have the HSA, we're going to have IPAF, mm-hmm, who specialise in, you know, platform aerial access, mm-hmm, and we're going to be our charity partner this year is Spinal Injuries Ireland. We're going to be working with them to host one specifically dedicated event covering falls from height. They talk about, we were talking about this earlier on, it's not even much more than a metre, it's 1.2 is where it's most.
Yeah, so I think for me, like when you think about working at height, you just automatically think big scaffolds. You know, you think about your MPRII. You think about such, like, I suppose, buildings, 2-3-story buildings. But to be fair, a lot of working at height, incidents and accidents actually happen on really small areas. And really, when you take your foot off the ground, you're nearly classed as working at height.
Yeah.
And it can be so, especially in jobs like this, to educate our lads here, and to educate them. And you know, I think an open safety culture is so important on any site, but you know, that they can ask questions and they can, you know, you can sit back. Picture risk assessments are another thing that I really think are a good idea. You know, maybe access and egress, what you thought it would have been a day or two, or when the rams were done, it's completely changed in 2 days, and then you have to sit back and you have to think, okay, how are we actually going to get up there, or what are we going to use? And having the right equipment for the right work activity is vital. And you know, like for the likes of here, like we had areas where, you know, a podium ladder wouldn't have actually worked. So this, yes, is a really good example. When we had our HV, I'm sure have a HV sector, and they come in to do HV works and terminations, and they couldn't work on the podium ladders. It wasn't possible for them to work on the podium ladders. So we were talking about mobile scaffolds then. And then you go into the training that you require, you know, no one can just put up a mobile scaffold. And
ground conditions even.
Yeah, and the ground conditions are so tough here, so we had to put in an area where we had to stone back before we could put the mobile scaffold up, and then we had to get the lads up in the mobile scaffold, and they were obviously checked, and you know, the inspections that would have had to be carried out. But that awareness that none of us probably would have thought about until we actually sat back and we were like, you know, this isn't actually going to work now. So we had to really kind of look back and risk assess it and go, how are we going to get in here? And you know, sure, I have to say, they've high risk activity kind of area. That there's 10 high risk areas in that, and working at height is number 1. So they really try and deliver such excellence when they're dealing with working at height. And you know, I suppose sure, doing an awful lot of work in pharmaceuticals and data centres where you might have your traditional, you know, you go into maybe a data hall and you could have 50 MPRIIs in the data hall, and then you look at the EP&R projects. So your substations and your solar farms and your wind farms, and your battery storage, where you're looking at maybe podium ladders, you're looking at mobile scaffold, you're looking at maybe the 1 or 2 MPRIIs. Like we would only have MPRIIs here in the substation, where we would have been looking at maybe podium ladders, we would have been looking at, and like sometimes, like we always would say, like stray away from A-frame ladders, etc. But there is times where you might be going, okay, you need to use one of them. So what are we going to do? And then you're looking at your permits, and we do a working at height audit, and it's just, I suppose, having SOP training. Sure, brilliant for SOP training, I have to say, and it's instilled in the apprentices from the very beginning. And you know, working at height SOP training is something that's so vital with Sure as well, and I suppose it's an internal thing that they do, and they're very good at it. So that's just, I suppose, your training, and it's just so important, really.
What's really obvious, but is the passion that you have for the job that you're in at the minute. And it's almost like you feel, I can see like the way that you're reacting to talking about what you do. You feel like you won the lottery almost.
Sometimes you do, like and then other days you're like, oh no, but like
no, but you look like you love it. And so what brought you into it?
I suppose I was very fortunate in the position, really, that my dad owns a health and safety training and consultancy business, so I would have worked with him throughout school. We would have had a lot of plant and machinery at home, so I would have got a good kind of awareness around plant and machinery, and then when I studied environmental health up in TUD in Grange Gorman, and when I was in my 3rd year I got a work placement on a pharmaceutical project at the time in the Netherlands, so that gave me great exposure to site work. And then Suir Engineering had a renewable project, so a substation with battery storage and a synchronous condenser about a half an hour away from where I live. When I was in my 4th year, and I got in with Suir kind of at the beginning doing a day a week, and then I suppose came the summer holidays I was full-time with them last year. And Clonfad had just started.
Brilliant.
And I got moved up to Clonfad, and you know, it has so much, like, it's broadened my horizon completely, because I probably would have been more pharma data driven when I was in college, going that's where I'm going to go, and then the exposure to EP&R has just been brilliant, like, and I find it really, really enjoyable, and you know, it's so, every day is so different. I think that's what I love about construction, and the buzz you get off it. Like, you come in the day and you could be faced with 15 different challenges that you might never see again, or it could be something that you've come up on before, but it's just, you know, it's I suppose the difference in your days, and how each project is so unique. Like I had never been in this location before, and now I'm here every day. Like so, you learn so much about the area, and you learn so much. Solar farms wouldn't have been something I wouldn't have really had much awareness of until here.
How do you deal with that concept as well? That almost every day you're driving, the environment's different. You know, like the landscape has changed, or
I think mentally sometimes it can be challenging, to be totally honest with you, and some days you come home and you're just like, oh my god, I never want to have one of those days again. But I think, to be fair, your site team around you, like I'm very lucky that I have such good support from my health and safety manager, who would just be here with me, and then from my regional health and safety manager. Internally with Suir, like we have a really good safety support system. You know, I would talk to other regional managers nearly on a weekly basis, and they offer you such good support, and I think that's brilliant. And I do believe that we have people here on the site who have worked with Suir maybe for the last 40 years, and their knowledge on how things are done is brilliant. Like a lot of the guys, the management here on this site, have come through maybe Statcraft and Suir since the very beginning of their solar farms, so they know the way it works, and they know you can nearly predict some of the challenges you might come across. But then other ones, like I suppose the ground here was a massive challenge that none of us probably had predicted at the beginning.
Yeah, well, when you look at the site, it doesn't look like boggy land, you know, but it's obvious the ground investigation would have obviously given information there. But I think there's 2 points that are really interesting. We use the word unique because there are unique challenges for you. It's the first time you'll have seen them. But what you talk about, I mean, that's a testament to Suir holding people for a full career for 40 years.
I think Suir they nearly have a reputation at this stage for people spending 20, 30, I do, and I think it's a credit to Suir, really, and it's a credit to the management who've been involved with Suir. You know, it kind of comes down to generations with them. You wouldn't think that a small little electrical company that started in Mooncoin and Kilkenny 41 years ago has grown to what it is now, where it's all over Europe, UK, the Nordics, Ireland, and in sectors like EP&R, data, pharma. And
there may be people that are at a much more advanced later stage in their career that are doing something completely different. There's other younger people as well that are maybe coming through school and thinking about options. What would you say to them in terms of thinking about a career either in construction or health and safety?
I think construction, you know, a lot of people might want to fray away from it or might be nearly afraid to get into it. I think exposure is so good. Like when I was in TY, so many years ago, I got exposure onto sites through a particular construction company, and it kind of set the seed in my head. And I do think, don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing someone's going to say is no. And you know, if you have contacts or if you know someone on a site, just ask them, can I come up with you for a day to see what it's like. Construction, it's one of those jobs where you can travel anywhere with it, you can go anywhere with it, and you know, there's so much more than just like, you have so many different sectors, and you know, people will think of construction and they'll just think of machines, but there's like so much other technical sides to construction, plus the amount of careers that are in construction, like, and at the moment it's hard to get construction workers, like, so I do think that if there's an opening for it, you know, especially as young girls coming into it, I think they really should give it a go. You know, Suir are really, like, on this particular site, we're so lucky. We've probably 6 girls working here throughout, office staff, quality, and you know, I wouldn't have seen that before. So it's nice just to, you know, I think, and across board, like Suir do a really, really good apprentice scheme, and you know, their apprentices are the training facilities, and I suppose the facilities that Suir have established up in City West, and training people that they've brought in. You know, it's really, really good. It's
the core of their business.
It is, to be fair, like it is. And you know, the continuous learning that they offer to their staff on sites as well, and like we would see every different, I suppose, like civil engineers going into quantity surveying, etc. Like you can really move around, and like a lot of our electricians will go to management levels where you'll see them as construction managers, you can see them as project directors, like, so it's nice to see people come through the ranks.
What's interesting in your role, and I'd be interested in talking to you in a couple of years' time as well, to see how the profile has changed, but you're exposed to everybody as well, so you see every trade, every professional, all the site management staff as well, so that must be interesting. Even
it is, because I suppose from a safety point of view, you know, we have, I suppose, open communication and discussion with the guys on the ground constantly. So we're looking after the electricians, we're looking after our general operatives, but then with us being PSCS here, we're also looking after our subcontractors.
Yeah.
So you really build a really good relationship with the lads on the ground. And to be fair, I do believe like that is so important from a safety point of view, but also, you know, from a site point of view, that you have a good team and that everyone will work well together, you know, and no problem is too hard then, because you're kind of in it together really.
Trying to communicate on a site, that's a different type.
Yeah.
How do you work there, or what sort of challenge?
I suppose for us here, you know, a language barrier is the biggest challenge we would have faced because of subcontractors coming in. A lot of our subcontractors that would have come in under our client for the installation of the panels might never have worked in Ireland before. So I suppose language barriers, you do end up going back to...
These aren't the ones from the north now,
no. No.
The language barrier.
Yeah, they probably find me hard to understand. But you know, it is quite difficult. Our signage and all kind of going through toolbox talks, translate and stuff was quite tough. But then I suppose we were using radio systems here when we were in the height of it, where we had got in radios that had a 10-kilometre radius on them, so we were able to kind of radio down to people. And then I suppose you're out on site, like you will spend, especially, you know, people say to me, safety, you're nearly always in the office, you'll spend a serious amount of time out on site, and you just have to, because of the size of it. You're not going to see what's going on, and you're not going to be with the lads if you're not out there. So I think the biggest thing on projects this size is to be outside with them.
People feel as well, that I know from, I remember inspecting a job at about 2:30 in the morning with 24/7 shifts drilling, and the guys had no glasses on. But from talking to them, I rang his boss, he was in bed in another country, and he was automatically going to stop their wages for the day. And I said, no, hold on a minute, you've given them the wrong PPE. It was misting up, just with the steam and the heat coming off the machinery, you know, equipment. So, but if you're not on site and you're not talking to them and not having a chat, they won't feel like they can tell you that, because they're afraid to get their boss in trouble, you know.
100%, and we would have had different instances here with certain types of PPE or certain types of work activities where, you know, it wouldn't have been the traditional form, and we kind of have to think outside the box of how are we going to go about this. And to be fair, learning, like you can kind of, from a safety point of view, you can go back and go, this is what's in your RAMs, this is what you have to do. But when you get out onto site and you see what's actually going on, it can be quite different. So the lads, like, learning from the guys there, and I suppose learning from what they're telling you, what they need.
It's practical.
It's so practical, and you have to be, safety is one of those things where you just have to be so practical on it, like you just really do, especially in the nature of these jobs, because they're so vast and because you have so many activities going on at the one time.
And people being isolated.
Yeah, 100%. And I suppose in areas where, you know, when we were here at the beginning of the year, kind of your Q1 of 25, we would have had a lot of people on site. We're coming kind of into the end of the year now, where our numbers have significantly dropped. So you're kind of looking at building crews, but you've only smaller crews, and you're trying to push the last mile. You know, sometimes incidents and accidents, they have a higher risk of taking place towards the end of a job. So it's just to ensure, like, the guys are well equipped with what they require, you know, they have proper access and egress, and that they're keeping in touch with us, and we're down there with them, because this is kind of the time where you obviously have to be a lot more cautious. And I will say Starcraft have been very good to us with driving the last mile, you know, and ensuring that everyone does work safely, and, you know, support from them too.
It's interesting. I know that some of the approaches a lot of companies like Suir would do is, like, especially just after a big break like Christmas, you'd have a safety refresh, like a step down.
We would, and to be fair, we would nearly do it after every bank holiday. You know, we would do a full stand down here with our guys, go through everything, go through all their PPE. You have everything. You need a hand there with the SPAs. Like, it's just something that we've done here. We've had to, because of the size of the site, you know, and it's nearly now on the Tuesday morning after bank holiday, they're already waiting to go, I need this, I need that, and it's been brilliant. Like,
it's great. I think that we've just had a really useful conversation, and I think there's a lot in that. There's a huge amount in that. I'm going to splice that out and take half of that for my careers campaign as well, definitely, Shannon, to try and encourage the next generation to be thinking about not just roles in construction, but specifically even health and safety, because a big area that we're trying to develop, apprenticeships and even mentorship, you know, that you talked about, that Suir adopts that approach. That's something that we want to do, and I think that was really useful conversation. Thanks for inviting us down to the project today, and good luck with the rest of the project and the rest of your career. I look forward to following you on social media.
It was lovely to have you, and thank God it didn't rain, because I suppose we are outside, so we didn't really know what way it was going to go, but I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you.